Eastern Front, winter 1943, somewhere outside Kharkov, a column of open-topped, half-tracked vehicles grinds through frozen mud at 3 a.m., engines screaming, infantry crouched low behind steel plates, barely thicker than a coin. One of them is about to do something no armored vehicle in history had done before. It is about to carry a squad of riflemen directly into the muzzle of a Soviet anti-tank gun at the same speed as the tanks beside it. Its name was the SDKFZ-251, and the Germans who rode inside it called it simply the Hanomag, after the factory that built it. But here is the question that will not get answered for a while. Why did an army obsessed with heavy armor build its most important vehicle out of steel so thin a rifle round could punch through it at 300 meters? The answer changes how you see every tank battle of the Second World War. To understand why the Hanomag existed, you have to understand a problem the German army solved before anyone else even saw it. Tanks in the 1930s could move fast. Infantry could not. When a panzer division broke through a line, its tanks raced ahead, and the foot soldiers who were supposed to hold the ground behind them were left walking, kilometers back, unable to keep up. The gap between the spearhead and the infantry was where entire offensives died. Germany needed a vehicle that could keep pace with a tank, carry a full infantry squad, and let that squad fight from inside it. Nobody had built that vehicle before. Nobody was sure it could be built at all. The solution, adopted in 1939 and rushed into mass production by 1940, was a hybrid nobody expected. Front wheels for steering, a tracked rear end for traction, borrowed from agricultural half-track designs already running through German farms. A Maybach 6-cylinder engine producing 100 horsepower, armor of just 6 to 14.5 millimeters, enough to stop rifle fire and shrapnel, nothing more. It could carry 10 men, a driver, and a commander, and it could do something that seemed almost absurd on paper. It could match a Panzer III across open ground, then stop, drop its rear ramp, and put an armed squad directly into the fight in under 10 seconds. This vehicle was never supposed to be the war-winning weapon it became. It was designed as a battlefield taxi. What happened over the next 5 years turned it into something the original planners never imagined. And the moment that changed everything happened not in a factory, but in a wheat field in France in May 1940. During the invasion of France, German commanders discovered something their own doctrine hadn't fully accounted for. Panzer divisions advancing without close infantry support were vulnerable to exactly the kind of ambush that should have destroyed them. Anti-tank guns hidden in hedgerows, waiting for tanks to pass so they could hit them from the side. The Hanomag solved this by riding directly behind, sometimes alongside, the tanks themselves. When resistance appeared, the rear doors dropped, and infantry poured out already in contact with the enemy, weapons up. Before, a single soldier had to run a meter under fire. It was the birth of what the Germans called Panzer Grenadier tactics, and for the next 5 years, it rewrote how mechanized war was fought. By the time the invasion of the Soviet Union began in June 1941, the Hanomag was no longer a single vehicle. It was a chassis. Engineers realized that if you could put 10 infantrymen on it, you could put almost anything else on it too. And what came next turned one troop carrier into more than 20 different machines. There was the Stummel variant, a Hanomag, carrying a short 75mm gun for direct fire support. There was another mounting a 20mm anti-aircraft cannon. There was a flamethrower variant that terrified defenders in bunker assaults, an ambulance variant, a radio command post variant used by division headquarters, and even a version mounting 6 rocket launcher tubes called the Wurfrahmen that could saturate a Soviet position with high explosive rockets in seconds and then drive away before counter-battery fire arrived. One chassis, 22 rolls. No other vehicle of the Second World War did this at this scale, and this flexibility is exactly why more than 15,000 of them were built, more than any other armored vehicle Germany produced during the entire war. But here is the open question this script has been circling for the last 2 minutes, and it's time to sit with it instead of answering it. If the Hanomag was this important, Why does almost nobody outside serious historians know its name today, when every schoolchild can draw a Tiger tank from memory? The answer says something uncomfortable about how history remembers war, and we'll come back to it. First, the Eastern Front. This is where the Hanomag was tested past its design limits, and where its weaknesses became impossible to ignore. Soviet winters dropped to minus 40 degrees Celsius. Standard engine oil turned to sludge. Crews learned to light fires under the engine block just to get it to turn over in the morning, a technique borrowed, embarrassingly, from Soviet tank crews facing the identical problem. The half-track's rear suspension, brilliant on dry ground, struggled in the deep mud of the Rasputitsa, the autumn and spring thaw that turned entire roads into rivers of clay. Vehicles sank to their axles. Convoys that should have taken hours took days. And yet, here's the truly surprising part. In that same mud, wheeled trucks, and even some German half-tracks with narrower tracks, stopped completely, while the Hanomag, with its wider front tires and rear track design, kept moving when almost nothing else could. The same vehicle that froze solid in January was, in October, one of the only things on the entire front still capable of movement. This contradiction defines almost everything about how this machine performed. At Kursk in July 1943, the largest tank battle in history, Hanomags rode directly behind Tiger and Panther formations across open steppe, delivering infantry into positions minutes after Soviet anti-tank guns had been suppressed, before Soviet infantry could reoccupy their trenches. German after-action reports from the battle describe Panzer Grenadier squads clearing anti-tank positions that would otherwise have bled the Panzer spearhead white. Soviet accounts from the same battle describe these open-topped vehicles differently, as easy kills for artillery fire once spotted, because that open top that let infantry deploy in seconds also let a single, well-aimed mortar round kill an entire squad in one strike. This is the vehicle's entire story in one sentence. Everything that made the Hanomag revolutionary also made it vulnerable, and German crews knew this every single day they rode inside one. Now the emotional layer, because the numbers alone don't explain why veterans who survived the war kept talking about this vehicle for decades afterward. Riding in a Hanomag meant sitting in the open, exposed from the shoulders up, while shrapnel, small arms fire, and aircraft strafing runs passed directly overhead with nothing but a thin steel wall between you and the outside world. Survivors described the sound of rounds striking the hull as a constant flat clang that never fully stopped during an advance. Unlike a tank crew sealed inside thick armor, Panzer Grenadiers inside a Hanomag could see exactly what was coming for them. Many veterans said this was worse than facing it directly on foot because you had nowhere to run and no illusion of safety to hide behind. Short sentence, hard truth. Men froze inside these vehicles in winter, men burned inside these vehicles when hit, and still they kept climbing back in because the alternative, walking behind a tank across open ground, killed soldiers faster than anything else in that war. Now back to the question we left open 6 minutes ago. Why doesn't the Hanomag get remembered the way the Tiger tank does? Here is the uncomfortable answer. Tanks make for clean stories. One machine, one crew, one duel against another tank, filmed and photographed and turned into legend. The Hanomag's importance was structural, not dramatic. It didn't win individual battles through a single heroic shot. It won them by making an entire army's tempo possible, by closing the gap between armor and infantry that had doomed every mechanized offensive before 1939. That kind of contribution doesn't photograph well. It doesn't have a single dramatic kill shot. But without it, German blitzkrieg tactics, as we understand them, literally do not function. If you're watching this and you love stories about vehicles that stayed in the shadows but changed how wars were fought, don't forget to subscribe, because the next video covers exactly this problem, the completely different answer the Soviets found to it. By 1945, with Germany's factories under constant Allied bombing, Hanomag production couldn't keep pace with losses. Simplified variants appeared, with angled armor plates replacing the original curved design because flat steel was faster and cheaper to press. Quality dropped, crews noticed. But even in the war's final collapsing months, Panzer Grenadier units still fought from these vehicles because there was still nothing else that did the same job. After the war, the design didn't simply vanish. Captured examples were studied by every major army that encountered them, and the core idea, an armored vehicle that carries infantry into contact and lets them fight from inside it, became the direct ancestor of the modern infantry fighting vehicle. Every Bradley, every BMP, every Marder rolling today owes its basic concept to a problem German engineers solved in 1939 with a half-track built on a farm tractor chassis. So here is the final, uncomfortable truth. This script has been building toward the entire time. The Hanomag never won a single battle on its own. It never had a duel moment, never destroyed an enemy tank in a single dramatic shot, the way the vehicles in this channel's other videos did. What it did was smaller and larger at the same time. It made the entire style of warfare Germany fought from 1940 onward physically possible. Take it away, and there is no blitzkrieg, no armored breakthrough doctrine, no Kursk the way it was fought. Just tanks, alone. Outrunning the infantry meant to protect them, exactly the problem that started this whole story. More than 15,000 built, more than 22 variants, frozen solid in January, unstoppable in October mud, and the direct ancestor of nearly every infantry fighting vehicle in service anywhere on Earth today. It never got the fame of the machine beside it. It made that machine's fame possible. If you want to keep following this channel's vehicles that stayed in the Shadows series one last time, the subscribe button is right below, and the next video is waiting for you.